Most amateurs are giving away more than 5 strokes per golf round without even realizing it. They are simply bad managers of their golf game. So in this video I've collected 7 signs that indicate you're not getting the maximum out of your golf score. Hi guys, my name is Kevin and I normally work in Formula 1 as a data and strategy expert, but probably like you, I'm a very passionate amateur golfer and I was always obsessed with the question, what really does make a good score in golf? And after I made pretty much every course management mistake you can make out there, today I will get very practical and display what holds your golf game back. So all these 7 signs that are about to come, I did wrong myself. And make sure to stay to the end because the most important signs that have the biggest negative influence on your golf score will be coming at the very end. Sign number 1. You think that course management isn't for you yet because you are still too inconsistent. So I covered this myth pretty much in my first video on this channel, so I will keep it short. But most amateurs pretty much say, no strategy can help me if I chunk or top the ball. So I'm just way too inconsistent to be able to plan my golf shots. Of course, I get it. Obviously a great strategy won't help you if you shank the ball, for example, and beginners will for sure have many shots during a round that are far from ideal. And my honest advice would be, if you have just started playing the game, focus on getting a good touch first and deal with strategy later. So let's pretend you have something around handicap 40 or 50 now. I mean, of course you can save lots of strokes due to a better strategy, but it won't make you a handicap 10 player. So course management in this phase can actually help you a lot. You can probably gain around 10 strokes or so, I would think. But then you'll have handicap 30, which is still not super great. So I think a bigger improvement for sure comes from just playing the game and get a better feel for the golf ball. But if you have now played golf for a bit and are below handicap 25, I would say, even if you're still inconsistent with your ball striking and accuracy, golf strategy is an important topic for you. Because data and experts pretty much agree that the more inconsistent you are, the more you can benefit from a great strategy. So as I said, a handicap 50 player can probably gain around 10 strokes with better course management, a handicap 20 player maybe 5 strokes, a scratch golfer 2 strokes, and a tour pro maybe only 0.5 strokes on average. So the effect is bigger the more inconsistent you are, but actually course management is highly valuable for all skill levels. Because for tour pros, for example, reducing your scoring average from 70.4 to 69.9 is massive regarding prize money. But for us it is important to understand, the more inconsistent you are, the more avoidable mistakes you do due to poor shot selection. Sign number 2. You play low risk golf. So if you find yourself hitting irons off the tee many times, playing layup strategies on par 5s and short par 4s, or try to avoid every hazard that is out there, chances are very high you're giving away lots of strokes. So actually in this book, Columbia professor Mark Brody found out that layup strategies on average cost you 2 to 3 strokes per round. But if you're into pro golf, you might be saying, but Zach Johnson won the Masters in 2007 with only layup strategies. And yes, it's true. But can you name another Masters winner that won with that strategy? Well, I personally can't. So just because it worked one time out of I don't know how many Masters, it means it is on average the better strategy? It's not. And if you look into data, Johnson won the Masters despite and not because of his layup strategies. And yes, maybe you don't have the distance right now to attack with your second shot on par 5s or drive drivable par 4s. But it's no problem. Then for you it might be your second shot on a long par 4 or your third shot on a par 5. At the end the rating of the hole doesn't matter anyways, only the remaining distance matters, and more often than not you should go for it. But what is interesting is that many amateurs choose a conservative club selection, like an iron off the tee, but with an aggressive aim. But actually with great course management that really lowers your score, it's actually the complete opposite. So you have to choose a conservative aim with an aggressive club selection. Sign number 3. You are playing elevator golf. So elevator golf pretty much means you have no idea which floor you're going to. So the elevator goes up and down. So as I said in previous videos, despite being a big stats guy, I pretty much made every course management mistake you can make out there. Which was also one of the reasons to make this YouTube channel, because I definitely know how it not works. And to be honest, I was the best elevator golfer out there. So I will show you some scorecards from me in the German Golf League, and most of the times I would start my rounds okay or even good, but then the elevator kicks in. I would play double and triple bogeys, continued by a par streak and maybe even a birdie, until I go up with the elevator again. So if it's the same for you, that you can play very consistent at times, maybe have 5 par holes in a row until the elevator kicks in, there's something wrong with your strategy. So a big number of double bogeys, triple bogeys, or even worse is always a big sign of a poor strategy. Because normally these high numbers occur when you hit your ball into hazards, which you can definitely avoid with great course management. But of course it depends on your skill level. So if you're a low single handicap golfer like me, your goal should definitely be to avoid double bogeys or higher during an 18-hole round of golf. But if you are consistently having these kinds of scores on your scorecard, then there's definitely something wrong. And if you are a handicap 15 golfer, yes, you will have double bogeys on your scorecard, but you should definitely avoid triple bogeys or worse. Well, I think personally, now you will have a good feeling whether you are an elevator golfer or not. And strongly connected to our last sign, sign number 4. You change your strategy based on how things are going. I see it so often and I personally still get tempted by it. So let's pretend you got off to a hot start and are about to break your personal record. In the past, I would personally then adjust my strategy. So I would get more conservative off the tee to make sure I don't mess my score up. But actually, it's the worst thing that you can do. Because if you start to think like that, you start playing scared. And playing too conservative not only leads to on average higher scores, but it also leads to mental issues. At least it was the case for me. Because if you think things like, please don't hit it out of bounds, please don't hit it in the water, it's unlikely that you can commit to your target. And if you don't commit to it, you will always increase the size of your shot pattern. But it can also be the other way around. So maybe you have started with some high numbers on your first few holes, then you can easily develop the mindset, well, now the round is over anyway, I'll just start to attack everything because I don't have a chance anymore. But that's deadly, because you will turn your below average round into catastrophic rounds. I personally did that mistake last year in the German Golf League. And as I said earlier, I have a low single handicap. So I was way over par after only a few holes, and I then decided to attack everything. I was always aiming for my best shot and not for my shot pattern. And do you know what my final score was? 103. 33 over par as a low single handicap golfer. And I can tell you, I was embarrassed. It was definitely not a good look. Not when my coach, but also when my teammates saw me after that round. So let's think data driven for a moment. For every shot that you have, there's a personal shot pattern. And there can actually only be one shot selection, one shot pattern so to say, that leads to the on average best scoring result. So if you have played your first 5 holes 2 under or 10 over par, has no influence, because your shot pattern remains the shot pattern. So playing the layup strategy doesn't all of a sudden make sense just because you're on the verge of breaking your personal record and you don't want to mess it up. It will still lead to an average higher scores. Sign number 5. You're consistently faced with difficult short-sighted shots. That's also a topic that I covered in a previous video, so I won't go into detail as much. But missing the green on the short side for your approach shots is incredibly painful. So I mentioned Mark Brody in his book, and he found out that when PGA Tour players miss their approach shot on the short side, they average 0.4 strokes more compared to missing it on the long side. So if you do that many times during a round, you will end up with a pretty high number. Especially we amateurs normally struggle a lot with these flop shots or short-sided chips or short-sided bunker shots. So if you then make the next mistake on being way too aggressive with your chip, you can easily card a double or triple bogey if you're not careful. And most of these short-sighted shots are a result of poor aiming with your approach shot. Because as I said earlier, most amateurs are conservative with their club choice and aggressive with their aim. And this strategy will for sure lead to higher scores, but as I said, I did a whole video about this, so make sure to check that out. Sign number 6. You receive more penalty strokes than would be ideal. Obviously, penalty strokes are extremely painful, but I also did a full video about this, how you hit way less balls out of bounds into water hazards or trees. But let's do a quick reality check right now, so you get a good feeling whether or not you lose more balls than ideal. So I keep mentioning Mark Brody. He obviously calculated lots of things regarding course management, but one of his most important insights I found is that he calculated an optimal out of bounds rate and an optimal water hazard rate for each skill level. Because if you are an inconsistent golfer with a lot of dispersion, you could think that hitting balls into penalty hazards is normal, as you're simply not that accurate. I covered in my video that on some holes you should even start to aim in the rough so you avoid these hazards, but there can also be a point where it's simply too much, as there will be holes where hazards simply stay in play. So that's why Mark Brody calculated an optimal out of bounds rate and an optimal water hazard rate that you can see in this graphic. And I think it's very interesting. So let's pretend you're a handicap 20 golfer, which I would say could have a scoring average of around 100. So you are a 100 golfer in that case. So your optimal out of bounds rate is only 2%. It means optimal based on your skill level would be 1 out of bounds every 50 holes. So 1 out of bounds in pretty much 3 full 18-hole rounds. So of course now is the time to ask yourself, how often do I hit balls out of bounds? And how many strokes could I save if I start playing to the optimal out of bounds rate? So he also calculated the same for water hazards, as you can see here. So if you're asking yourself why it is more optimal to hit more balls into water hazards than out of bounds, I highly recommend to you my video how you should deal with hazards, because there I explain in detail why water hazards have a smaller influence on your score, which is why the rate is higher. So I normally would put myself in that 80 category, so for me 3% would be the ideal water hazard rate, which basically means 1 penalty area in 36 holes, so in 2 full rounds of golf. And I can tell you, I was way above that rate, way above it, which in other words meant I was a bad course manager. So I think by now it should be pretty clear with these first 6 signs if you have room for scoring improvement or not. But normally 99% of amateur golfers are bad course managers and lose a lot of strokes there. But there's one final thing missing, and it's actually the most important thing to understand the whole topic. Sign number 7. You always plan for your best shot. So I already used the word shot pattern in this video, but it's probably the most important term in course management. Because most amateurs, including me, are always planning for their best shot and not for their average shot. But obviously golf is hard and you will have horizontal and vertical dispersion. So if you pick a target, you won't be able to hit all your balls inside the radius of a bottle cap. I think we all understand it, yet we are almost always not planning for our shot pattern, but for the shot we hope to come out of our shot pattern. And it leads to poor aiming and higher scores. And actually, we have shot patterns for every shot. For our drives, for our approach shots, but also for our short game shots and our putts. But the thing is, most amateurs underestimate the size of shot patterns and have no idea of their personal shot pattern in the first place. But it's the basis for absolutely everything in course management. So to be a really great golf strategist, you must understand and know your own shot patterns. And maybe with all these signs now, you've realized there are actually lots of things that you could improve regarding course management. And one thing that I can tell you is, amateurs also underestimate the effect of golf strategy. So I've seen 15 handicappers in my life with great distance and ball striking, but on the other side I've also seen scratch golfers with inconsistent ball contacts, lots of dispersion, and every time I got paired with them, after the round I asked myself, how can they be such great golf players with such a bad golf game? Because when I compared our golf games, I was hitting it longer off the tee, and also my ball striking was better, and my dispersion wasn't that much bigger than theirs. And actually short game is one of my strengths, so that can't be the differentiating factor as well. But I can tell you what the big difference was. I had no idea what I was doing on the golf course, but the thing is, you don't learn these kinds of things other than with many decades of golf experience. I personally played my 12th golf season last year and I still had no clue at all about course management. So I'm from Germany, and of course we can go to a golf coach when we have problems with our swing. But where do we go when we can't execute our golf game on the course? I mean, you can also go to a normal golf coach, but most of them aren't that deep into data, and most of the time they only give the common advice too that is actually wrong. So normal golf coaches are specialized to fix your swing, not your golf game. And course management that really lowers your score works different than all the advice we normally hear. Work for accuracy first, get distance later. Aim for the middle of the green. Work more on your short game than your long game. And all this advice has one thing in common. It is complete BS if you look into data. Sorry to be that harsh. So I learned that the hard way myself and spent pretty much the whole last year to get deep into the topic with reading lots of books, articles, scanning for existing data and doing my own research. And I packed everything together that I found out and that I personally researched myself that actually works to make you a better golfer. And if you're interested, you can check that out on my website in a completely free coaching series where you will learn in detail what actually leads to better golf scores. So make sure to check out that link in my bio or scan that QR code here that will lead you directly to your free coaching session. And you know what? Swing changes are difficult and they normally take a long time, so you actually see improvements regarding your scores. And new clubs are more often than not a gift to ourselves and not a gift for our golf game. Because most of the time, nothing at all happens with your score. But with proper course management, it's different. It works immediately and it lowers your score much more than you think. So you don't need more lessons there. Once you understood the basic system of course management, you can use it immediately and it works. So go on that website and improve your golf game. See you there.